This your boy Humble Warrior checking in with you. Back with another video, speaking on Tua. Um, I did a little research myself on some of his numbers, and for the most part, he had a pretty good season. Gonna do a little breakdown for you concerning his numbers against certain teams and um, the eventual outcome and so on and so forth. So, first game we're gonna talk about is the Arizona Cardinals. He was 28 to 48, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. In that game, he orchestrated a comeback win because they were down by, I want to say, no, they were down by 10 going into the fourth. He actually outscored them 10-0 to actually lead the Dolphins to a win. Also in that game, the defense basically left the doors wide open for Kyler Murray. The beginning, though, was scoop and score, so they went up 7-0. And after that, Kyler Murray pretty much did what Kyler Murray always does. The flip side to that was that almost every single important possession of that game, Tua actually came through for them, whether it be first downs or getting on the board with either a field goal or a touchdown. Majority of it was touchdowns, though. So he outplayed Kyler Murray in that game, even though Kyler Murray had over 300 total yards. Still, when the crunch time came, Tua was able to bring them back and actually lead them to a win. His completion rate in that day was 71.43%, which is pretty good. He looked in control of the offense, and like I said, he outscored Kyler in the fourth, which is the most important quarter in a game. On to the next game, against New England, he was 20 of 26, 145 yards, and he didn't throw a touchdown. He actually threw a pick. On that play, he was being sacked, and he tossed the ball basically toward the receiver, but the defender saw the ball as well, and he broke on it and picked it off. So in that regards, throughout that game, he actually learned from that, where he had a receiver actually open, but because of the blitzing corner, he stepped up in the pocket, ran straight ahead, juked the other defender, and got into the end zone, which he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. So it was pretty productive on the ground, and as far as passing goes, he did enough to keep the chains moving, and he also came from behind to win that game. So he already has 2 comeback victories, according to Pro Football Focus, on his resume. Now, it is a game I do want to talk about, the Kansas City game. They lost 27 to 33. He was 28 to 48 for 316 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Now, this was a very highly anticipated game because at that time, the Dolphins were, I want to say they was 6-3, and the Chiefs were 11-1, or it was either 9-1 or 10-1, one of those 2 records. The Dolphins basically had a 3-game winning streak. They were coming into that game as a hot team in the AFC. And, of course, Kansas City was Kansas City. So, throughout the game, at first it was, pretty contested. Mahomes threw 2 early interceptions, and it looked like the Dolphins would, get a cushion because Tua threw a touchdown, then they got a field goal and went up 10-0. Unfortunately, second quarter they got outscored. I think it was 28-0 or somewhere around there around, because at halftime it was like 30-10. Oh, well, never mind. That would be 20-0. Because the halftime score, no, that would be 30-0 because the halftime score was 30-10. And at that point, it looked like it was about to. Actually, no. Yeah, well, I think halftime they was down by, I think it was 20. Then the third quarter, it looked like, Kansas City had seized possession or seized momentum to go up even further. But the defense continued to stall them out, drive after drive after drive after drive. And to Tua's credit, third quarter he didn't muster much of an offense, but come the fourth quarter, they actually outscored Kansas City 17-3. They had, I think they had one possession where it was like a punt return for a touchdown. Tyreek Hill really wasn't a big factor in the game, although he did have an end around for 32 yards, where he basically outran the safety who took a bad angle, and he scored on that possession. Outside of that, it was pretty. It was a pretty productive day for Tua. That was the game where he basically broke out, and he hit the national spotlight running. He did play on the same level as Mahomes that day. He actually outplayed him, although Mahomes did get the win because I think it was a fourth and four play or something like that. They decided to punt, but I'm not sure how Miami actually messed it up. I think it was 12 men on the field, if I'm not mistaken. It was some bogus call that they had, and Kansas City managed to close out that game, and Tua couldn't get back on the field to actually engineer a late drive to help them, go to overtime or even win the game because of a poor special teams play. But outside of that, he looked really good. His completion percentage was in that game itself, it was 60.34%, which is not that bad, but it's not that good either. Again, majority of his numbers came in the fourth quarter. So first two quarters, he didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, he mustered some drives, but it didn't result in points. Either he took a sack, I know, in I think the second quarter, and they forced him to do check downs here and there, or his receivers are actually dropping the ball. And on the interception play that happened to him, Jakeem Grant was actually open, but because Tua had to move in the pocket a little bit, when he threw the ball, Grant actually went up in the air. He met the ball in the air, but then it bounced off his chest. I don't understand why he couldn't catch with his hands, but things happen in football, so it resulted in the Honey Badger picking it off. And the other play that Jakeem was actually wide, he was actually open. Tua actually threw a great deep ball, but for some reason Jakeem Grant dropped it. That's a common theme that's happened to him most of his rookie campaign. His receivers dropped a lot of passes. People say, well, some of the ball placement was off. Some of it was, yes. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's not all on Tua. Was not Tua's fault in some cases. Some of it was, but most of it they were dropping passes. Easy stuff they were dropping, but first downs or even potential touchdowns was being dropped. So I think Gronkowski had a couple of drops in that game against Kansas City, especially one where it was a critical third down play. He literally just dropped the ball. I'm assuming he either was thinking about what he was gonna do next when he had it, but when I think he ran I think it was a 10-yard out or 10-yard in, and Tua put on the money. He still dropped it, and then he looked at Tua and said, my bad, it's my fault. Happens, but it stalled out and they got off the field. And that's when, Mahomes then scored again out that 40-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill, who basically ran by everybody to score. But that game was pretty good. So the next game he played was the Chargers. He was 15 to 25 for 169. He had 2 touchdowns and no picks. That was a game that his counterpart, which is Justin Herbert, had probably one of his worst games as a pro. Outside of the Patriots 45 to nothing blowout game that he had. The Dolphins actually confused him really bad. As Doug Durong said in his podcast, they actually forced him to run the ball several times because the coverage confused him so much to the point that he was afraid to throw the ball. He did not want to put the ball in harm's way, which he ended up doing. I think Xavier Howard picked him off. But he looked like a rookie that day. And Tua actually stepped up, made some good passes, made some throws that he needed to make. However, one of the passes Tua threw, Keith Murray, the linebacker out of Oklahoma, had he had hands, he would have picked this ball off. And I mean, it really went right directly through his hands, and for whatever reason, he dropped it. So I don't know what to say about that, but it was his chance to actually beat or get that pick to stall that drive, and he couldn't do it. That was one of those passes too. It should never thrown. Even I said it when he threw it. I was like, no, but became a completion, and the drive kept going. But that's one of those throws that Tua probably won't do again because based on the coverage, he had two different defenders right there in the throwing lane. And on top of that, the tight end went behind the linebacker still was in his throwing lane. Now somehow Tua got it in there, but you're not supposed to throw those kind of passes, which he learned from. It didn't happen again. So to his credit, that play was made, which is a luck play, but we'll take it. It was a first down, so that's all that really mattered. And he did outplay Herbert in that game, and they got the victory. Sorry for my throat, by the way. I don't know why I sound like I'm about to get emotional about stuff, but nonetheless, he did his thing in that game, so I appreciated that. The next game is the Cincinnati game. Now, this is a game where I'll say he showed more of his ability to scramble. I remember one play, I think it was third and 10. He actually rolled out to his right, and he found Miles Gaskin going down the sideline, who actually broke off his route to run with Tua to give him a throwing lane. He went up and caught it, and it was like a 37-yard completion. He looked pretty decent in that game. His numbers were 26-39, 296 yards. He had a touchdown, and he didn't throw any interceptions. His completion was 66.67%, so that wasn't so bad. But nonetheless, like I said, they beat Cincinnati. Could have beat him a lot worse, but again, he missed some passes. One of them, matter of fact, was Jakeem Grant, who actually broke open into the end zone, and he missed them. I think he was being pressured, but had he set his feet, took the hit, he could have probably delivered a much easier ball. But it happens. He did win the game, so that's what matters the most. But he had a pretty productive day against that squad. I don't think now Joe Burrow didn't play that game, so that's one of those games where I would love to see him and Burrow be on, going against each other, but they'll have their time. Joe Burrow is recovering from a ACL, and MCL tear, so they'll have their duel for years to come. And we're gonna talk about the Buffalo Bills game, which was the last game of the season that Tua participated in. He was 35 of 58, 361 yards, a touchdown, and 3 picks. Now, that game itself, I watched the entire game. First quarter, his offense was stagnant. He came out flat. He didn't really spark the offense as needed. So I think the first or second drive, they actually got points. They got a field goal, which he could have got a touchdown, but Tua missed the guy who was open. But it does happen nonetheless. They got a field goal out of it, so they went up 3-0. The rest of the first half was a total nightmare. They were lackadaisical. Defensively, the first quarter, they held it together, but the second quarter, they just laid a, they gave up 28 straight points to the Buffalo Bills, who at that point was toying with them. It got to the point where Josh Allen, actually, when they went up 21-3, he wanted to come out the game to sit, but his coach insisted that he go back out there and get another rep in. And 4 passes later, they're up 28-3. And the messed up part is it wasn't so much the passing that hurt Miami a lot. It was the fact that the Buffalo Bills were balanced. They were running and throwing the ball that day. Majority of it, though, they were picking on Nick Needham, and sad to say his name like that, but he was getting owned by Brown. And when it wasn't Brown, Stephon Diggs was owning Byron Jones. So it was a bad day all around. It was a total team loss. I mean, to Tua's credit, the second half he came out there and he started slinging it. Unfortunate for him, he threw 2 extra picks in the second half, and he looked basically desolate. Even though he did put up garbage time numbers, still not gonna count for much because at the end of the day they got blown out. The game was over after the second quarter, But I thought the third, they would muster something because they actually got a touchdown on the board to cut in the league. But after that, it's like, you know, the backup quarterback for Buffalo couldn't miss. So in days like that, you just throw your hands up and, it's back to the drawing board, which is what they end up, having to deal with. Which, to Tua's credit, he didn't waver. You know what I'm saying? His attitude was the same. Um, he he still said that, overall, they had a great season. It is a disappointment, though, to be sent home and not be able to participate in the playoffs or not make the playoffs. So that in itself is motivation for him over the summer to work his butt off to get in game shape to where his body's back to where he wants it to be, and he can actually lead the offense to the postseason. Now, as far as the trade rumors go, because I keep hearing them all the time, I keep reading about it or seeing it on YouTube or whatever. Um, as I said in my last video, I just don't see them, trading Tua. Now, would you want to leverage your whole future behind Deshaun Watson? I wouldn't. And Deshaun is a proven commodity, but at the end of the day, you need the players around you to make you who you are. I mean, Tom Brady is a commodity, is a once in a lifetime type of commodity because what he had in New England was next to lesser tier, but he's able to elevate people around him to play at his level and to continue to win Super Bowls. That's why he has 7 now. But outside of that, um, Tua needs his playmakers. I mean, yes, he's a generational talent himself, but it helps when you have receivers or running back that can actually make a defense sweat. You know what I'm saying? Where they can command attention from more than one person, and the defense has to focus on them to stop them and allow you to get the ball to your playmakers and let them go out there and do what they're supposed to do to put points on the board. So I'm praying that they stick with Tua. I mean, nothing else has really been said about trading him, but it's still early. I think the free agency starts March 17th, if I'm not mistaken, and then the draft is April 29th. So between then, they have a lot of things I'm pretty sure they're working on behind the scenes. And I'm just hoping that they will, stick with him. He's been working out, like I said in my last video. I've seen the pictures. He's he's getting back in form, and I don't think it would be fair to simply judge him off of 9 games. Now, if you want to do that, be my guest. I mean, I've read all kind of posts about him, but to be fair, 9 games is a tiny sample size. And on top of that, most of the games he was in, he didn't throw the ball a whole lot. And when he did throw the ball, most of it was productive. Now the only thing he has to trim down is sacks. He was sacked 20 times in 9 games. That's a big number you don't want to see, because that's basically almost 2 sacks a game that he was taking almost. The Denver game he took 6, and the Raiders game he took 4. Um, but to his demise though, not his credit, but to his demise, his offensive line, the veterans on the offensive line was the majority issue. The rookies actually held it down, but the veterans, they were the ones getting exposed and blown off the line or confused with who to actually block, and thus defenders were able to get a free rush on Tua, either to knock him down or rush him into a pass where he was originally going through reads, but he has to also be aware of what's around him or evade it just to get up the field to throw the ball to people who are still running routes trying to get open. So his offensive line has to get better. I think communication up front is crucial to that. I also think that him learning how to call a reasonable audible to, shift the protection to one side or the other, or just to keep it balanced to where, you know, everybody got a man on the hat, per se, to where the defense isn't just free rushing or blitzes aren't getting home all the time. You can't stop it every single time, but the mere fact that they were getting home without blitzes, they were getting home with 3 people sometimes. 3 against 5, that should not happen, but because they were so confused off of the stunt coverage that defensive lines were running, they were getting free rushes on Tua where they can hit him, or at least they can push him, or, rush him into a pass that he didn't want to throw. So it's more so like, I can understand, him being a rookie and stuff like that. But I feel like as an OC, you don't want to see your quarterback take that much of a beating because it will take its toll, years down the road. I want to see Tua play for 20 years. I really believe he has that kind of talent. But if they don't get better on the offensive line, then, they may have him for 6, 7 more years, but that's going to be it. And I don't want to see his career cut short because does he have the potential to be a Hall of Famer? Yes, he does. I believe he can put up 50, 60,000 yards passing, maybe even 70. That's why I said next year his numbers are going to double. So it won't be 18 or what was it, 11? No, yeah, 18, 14. He'll throw for 3,000, maybe 3,200 yards. It will almost double because he have 16 games where he can put together, drive after drive, play after play, and he could put up 300-yard games, maybe even 400-yard games on his resume and win games and have a great QBR or a great rating for that game. I mean, that's how special a player that I feel like he can be. But Miami has to be able to put that around him to where they're saying to him, we believe in you enough to put this around you to give you the time and the tools to lead us to a Super Bowl. Now, if you do that for him, you saw what he did in college. They went to the national championship game twice. They did lose one time. They got, blown off the field by Clemson. But they did win when he was a freshman. And he got inserted in, and they were down. They was only down 13-0, but still, the mere fact that they trusted him enough to put him on the field, and he led them back to a comeback win with a game-winning touchdown pass, that shows you the talent that he really possesses. And people tend to forget that in college he was actually, 217 pounds, close to 220, and he can run, and he was able to elude people with full athleticism, but because he got injured or that major hip injury, it took away some stuff from him. But he's still, working his way back to be that player. I don't think for a second that he lost it. He's barely only 22 years old. He hasn't lost nothing. If anything, the only thing he's gonna gain now is more experience, which is what a rookie campaign was, and he'll gain the playbook knowledge to be able to audible out of plays or be able to call certain coverages on the line of scrimmage to get better, to be able to see things before they happen, and then he can carve defenses up. And any and everybody will be able to witness that over the entire season next year. As long as the Dolphins stay the course, they can win 12, 13 games next year and be in the hunt for the number 1 seed, which would be great to see them play at Rock Stadium, at their home stadium. It would be great to see that. But all in all, like I said, this is a video about his game breakdown. To me, overall, his season was decent. I'm not gonna say it was great. I'm not gonna say it sucked. It was decent. And even he said himself, like I said in another video, he said himself that it was below average. But that's his standard. That's what he wants to set for himself because he knows he can do a lot better. I know he can do a lot better. I was disappointed in the 94-yard games he had. But I understand why, and I watched the game and I saw what was going on with him. They were literally confusing his offensive line, and when that wasn't happening, he was so uncomfortable in the pocket that he actually stepped out of coverage to get sacked, to try to extend the play, but then he ran into the defender who was waiting on him. So it was a combination of things going on offensively. And the fact that he didn't have camaraderie built with his receivers, then it made things a lot worse. But again, he has time now to fix all that. That's what the entire offseason is for, including OTAs, training camps, and all that stuff, where once he gets, full control of the offense, they're going to be hell to deal with. And I look forward to seeing this. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to be putting the intro in front of this video, so let me know about that as well. But give me your thoughts. How would you guys rate his rookie season? And what do you think his numbers going to be for next year? I'll be coming out with more videos this week, although I'll be more busy because I have to prepare for this ASU inspection on Friday. So may not make a video till next weekend, but at least this will be posted and I can get you guys' thoughts. Peace.